Hello, I'm Brent Zeller, founder and creator of Effortless Tennis. I've played organized competitive sports from age 7, taking up tennis at 14, and doing pretty well at competitive tennis for the next 18 years. I began teaching tennis in 1974, and within a short time started recognizing the many negative consequences of throwing students into competition unprepared. In other words, before achieving competence in any of the physical or psychological fundamentals necessary for success. Competition is an advanced aspect of any sport, not something for beginners or people who aren't proficient in the basic skills. We can't run before we learn to crawl. In the early 1980s, I began de-emphasizing competition, finally removing all competition from my program in 1992. I realized that if I was going to help all my students attain their potential, I needed to mentor them in mastering the physical and psychological basics before they started keeping score. Competence before competition. The premature introduction of competition into the learning process is the biggest obstacle to success in competition. The competitive learning model dominates education and unfortunately does more harm than good for the vast majority of people, even the winners. Trying to learn and compete simultaneously limits performance and potential, increases anxiety and tension, and undermines perseverance, self-esteem, confidence, camaraderie, and enjoyment. I've fine-tuned these keys to peak performance over my 51-year teaching career. The keys are universal and apply to learning all sports, activities, and subjects. Come learn about the keys to peak performance and begin unlocking your full potential both on and off the court. Joy is the first key to peak performance, not something we get after we start winning something. Joy as we're doing the process. This is a great sport. Look where we are, here we are, getting to learn to play tennis in Marin County, California. Joy is about learning how to work with your emotional state. Am I starting to get upset with myself? Am I starting to get upset with the other person who missed that shot? Did I get upset with somebody, or did somebody get upset with me before I came here? And now I'm bringing that energy here. It's like once you close the gate, you're here. You're working on yourself. And so you'll hear me frequently say, how is the joy factor? How's your joy factor? And that's usually when I'm sensing your joy factor isn't where it needs to be for peak performance. Because these are the keys to peak performance, not the keys to mediocrity. The keys to peak performance. And so joy has to be in there. Again, that's not to make fun of you. It's just to point that out and help you start learning. Oh yeah, wait, I'm getting all upset here, because getting upset isn't going to help. It's only going to further distract you from succeeding. And I learned this. I played African music for 20 years, and I learned this playing with these African musicians. This one guy was a real taskmaster, and it was a Congolese drum and dance camp, and this guy was just like so disappointed in us all week. And then he's like, oh my God. Yeah. But then at the end of the week, we had the last class, you have the drummers and then you have the dancers. And so there were like 75 dancers and maybe 20 drummers, and we were drumming and they danced to our drumming. And at the end of the class, we went into the middle, and the dancers surrounded us, and it was really cool. But all of a sudden, the energy just went through the roof, and it was just this magical moment. And I looked over at the instructor, and he was beaming joy. He was just so excited because, again, when you have that experience, when you're there, when something like that happens, it's very different. And so here he was, he'd been glum to us all week, not mean or anything, but just like, oh my God, you guys can do that. And then all of a sudden, but the joy, and that's when I put joy at number 1 on the keys. So it's just monitoring your emotional state. Are you getting upset with yourself?
Are you getting distracted? And so it's just a good reminder. It's like you can't be joyful all the time. But peak performance happens when you're joyful. You can play, like John McEnroe was a great example of somebody that played high-level tennis when he was angry. But that's a real exception to the rule. And so why would you want to be angry in doing this sport? You want to have fun. And so how do you work with that? So that's key number one. Then key number two is something all three of you have been getting much, much better at. Relaxation. Yeah. So you'll hear coaches tell you got to be more relaxed. And again, it's something like why you don't want to learn how to be relaxed in competition. You need to learn how to be relaxed before you start competing. And that's why everybody pretty much comes here more tense than they need to be. You're all pretty relaxed right now. All of a sudden the ball's there and you're having to hit it, tend to tighten up. So again, deprogramming, reprogramming here, learning how to be cool, calm, and collected while you're playing. And initially, because of all the previous programming, that's not going to happen right away. And then you can start beating yourself up. Oh, come on, you're not relaxed enough. No, it's like, no, just it's an observation. Oh yeah, I need to be more relaxed. And how do I do that? There's never been a study that showed that tense muscles and a tense mind create faster reaction time or seeing and assessing a situation more quickly and clearly. Has there ever been a study that showed tight muscles create faster reaction time?
Yes.
No.
Well, I mean, if you're being chased by a wild animal,
No,
yeah.
You still need to be more relaxed. Here, I'll tell you a story. Not being chased by wild animals, but 1988 Olympics, I believe it was, Carl Lewis was one of the big track guys for the U.S., and there was some other guy that was really top, and they were doing the 100-meter dash in the Olympics, and Carl Lewis lost by a fraction. And afterwards they interviewed Carl Lewis, and he said, well, what was the difference? And my mouth dropped open. He said, well, he was able to relax down the straightaway. So now here you're doing the fastest race in the world, and the guy who came in second says, then there's the story of the guy was also using steroids. But Carl Lewis saw it as the guy was able to relax while running as fast as humanly possible. So anyway, yeah, I don't think there has actually been a study that shows that tight muscles create, and definitely not a tight mind creates seeing and assessing situations more quickly and clearly. So it's like we have to be relaxed because we have fractions of seconds out there between missing and making shots. So yeah, that we're going to work on that. And I describe, well, they're all like an onion. There are all these layers to it. And so you start peeling off those layers of tension and you get more and more relaxed. But you can continue it just like on an onion. There's so many layers there, and you start getting more and more relaxed. And then the trick is, how do you maintain focus? Key number 3 is concentration. So you have to be incredibly relaxed and mentally relaxed, but also have a laser-like focus on the ball. Because when we're out there hitting, it's all about staying focused on the ball to be able to hit it. If our mind is wandering all over the place, we're not going to be able to hit the ball consistently. So, and the concentration is about coming back to the present. There's no past, there's no future. When the ball is in play, there is only the now. But what happens? We miss a real easy shot, we're beating ourselves up, or most people are beating themselves up over, and here comes the next ball. Well, what are the chances that you're going to make that next ball? Lower. And so then you miss that one and you're even more upset with yourself. So it's like, how do we hit the ball, whether it was the best shot in the world or the worst shot in the world, and come back to the present right afterwards? And this is where tennis is just an amazing activity to learn this skill. And it's really cool because it helps you with your concentration in all other areas of life. Because here you got to be over here, you got to be there, you got to be back, you got to be forward. But you have to stay focused. It's a great challenge, but a really fun challenge. As initially it can be frustrating, but then you start, oh yeah, wait, I can do that, and you learn how to let go of that old shot and right back to the present. Great skill. And it's not not this kind of focus. You'll hear me say a bunch of times, are you feeling the joy? And that's usually when I sense you're not feeling the joy. And then then you got your game face on. You're like, oh, it's like, I'm not sensing the joy. Oh, I'm just focusing. I'm just focusing. It's like, that's how you have to focus with that look. You can be focused and very relaxed too. But it's that thing of, tell people about how, as kids, somebody will tell you, you're not being serious enough. Come on, you got to be more serious. And looking back on that, what I say now is that, no, you have to be more focused. You don't have to be more serious. But everybody I got to be serious. I got to be serious. And it's like, no, I just have to be more focused and relaxed at the same time. The ball doesn't magically go into the center of your racket and at the ideal contact point. You are 100% in charge of that. And so if your focus wavers just a little bit, all of a sudden, boing, you miss it. So this is the great meditation of tennis, and it will help you in all other areas of life with your ability to stay focused in more and more stressful situations. So those are the big three: joy, relaxation, and concentration. That's what we're going to be working on while we learn this wonderful sport of tennis. And so tennis is the vehicle to help people learn these skills and also understand that the learning process, up until you can demonstrate competence in the basic skills, should be non-competitive to help the most people succeed. But it's like, you're in there in the competition, and it's the cream rises to the top and everybody just sort of falls away, and that's not very psychologically healthy for people. So we want to work on having a much more psychologically healthy learning environment. And this gets on to key number 4, patience. What you're asking yourselves to do is a high skill, fine motor coordination activity. Nobody comes here with the requisite hand-eye coordination unless you've done some other activity like a martial art to a very high level. So it's going to take time. So you need patience. And if you don't have patience, you'll either learn that skill here or you'll stop playing tennis because it doesn't happen overnight. But you start seeing it. It starts happening. And so with patience, it's just we just have to be patient. You can't, I'm going to be patient. That's not how it works. We just have to be patient. Now, the next key is perseverance, and that's the active part of that. So when it seems like you're not doing as well as you wish, stay with it. Because again, you're asking yourselves to learn a really challenging sport. But what I've found over these 50 years is that everyone can learn it if you take your time and have that patience and the perseverance to get through those things. Usually when it feels like, it's just not happening, you're persevering and it's not working, all of a sudden, if you stay with it at that point, all of a sudden that seems to be the place where it goes to the next level. In this part, I talk about the learning plateaus. Okay, when we first start, we learn a bunch pretty quickly, but then we hit a plateau. And when we're on that plateau, it doesn't seem like we're making much progress. So it's easy to lose patience and say, okay, well, that's not for me. But if you stay with it, about the 1 year mark, all of a sudden enough stuff has integrated into your mind and body that you're at another level. And then so you go up and then you're on that level. That next plateau can be 1 to 3 years long. And our society does not teach patience. It's, we want it now, and if we can't buy it now, then we'll give up on it. But you have to learn that patience and perseverance, because all of a sudden that 1 to 3 year mark, and the more you're practicing, the shorter that 1 to 3 year mark is before you make that next leap. But then you really get into another level where it's like, wow, I'm really doing well and having a lot of fun. And then the next plateau can be another 2 years, so the 5-year mark. And then from there, the plateaus get like 5 years long. But yeah, I've been playing tennis for 56 years and teaching it for 50 years. And I find every so often, I feel like I've made another leap in my progression. So even after all these years, that still happens. So yeah, tennis, the saying used to be the sport for a lifetime. So learn it now, and then you can play it well and enjoy it for the rest of your life. And then the next key is self-motivation. I can tell you everything you need to do. You have to do it. Can't do it. Nobody can do it for you. You can't go to the store and buy a forehand or a backhand, right? You have to work through it, or a serve. You can take lessons, and that helps. Private lessons help. But yeah, you have to have that self-motivation to go out and practice, to talk to each other and say, hey, you want to get out and hit some other day and practice. That's how it works. You don't learn this through osmosis. The next one is hand-eye coordination. You need incredible hand-eye coordination to be a good tennis player. Nobody comes here with it, but we all have the ability to do that, especially when there's no competition in the process. Learning to track a moving object and get our racket and our eyes and our mind on the ball when the ball is there, and then do that again and again and again. In this program, we sort of go back to day one. Like when you're little kids and somebody should have been throwing the ball to you but didn't, and then you're like, well, why am I not more coordinated than I should be? Well, yeah, that's what I tell everybody. Ask me anything about young kids. Throw them balls, big balls, little balls, roll balls to them, bounce them, anything to start learning that skill, because that's how you learn it. I've worked with people that couldn't walk and chew gum, could barely walk and chew gum, and if they stayed with the process, they got good hand-eye coordination. So it takes time, but everybody has that ability. If you haven't trained in that before, how can you expect yourself to just do that? And if you get pushed into an environment that's too advanced for you, then you're not going to do well and you're probably going to quit. So we don't want you to quit. We want you to stay with this and actually enjoy this wonderful sport. The next one is cellular memory, commonly referred to in the old days as muscle memory. But to me, it's in every cell of the body. And so I like to use the term cellular memory. It's like the 21st century muscle memory. And the problem with that is whatever we repeat patterns into the subconscious, which is great. It's our natural learning system, and it's a wonderful thing. But unfortunately, the body doesn't have the ability to know what works and what doesn't work. It just knows what we're repeating. And so it's like, hey, you're doing this same thing over and over. Must be important. I'll program it for you into your body. Under pressure, whatever is most deeply in there is what's coming out, whether we want it to or not. Right? Cellular memory said, hey, you just kept doing this, and whatever bad habits you've had in the past, right? So here, bad habits. So in the Effortless program, we call it less than optimal habits. And because what happens is that everything we do, if you run for a ball, you swing and hit it and miss it, something happened that you could qualify it as bad. Again, that's part of the competitive system. Oh, that was bad. You were bad. But when you do that, some aspects of that stroke actually were good. Just the one or two pieces you failed at. So rather than putting that word in and giving so much power to that word of bad, we like to look at it as more or less than optimal. So that because again, I'm bad. Oh, that was bad. So you'll hear me say, because of the programming, your body will say, come out, oh, that was bad. Oh, that was bad. It's like, and I will say, no, that was less than optimal. It's our job to program in things that work. So cellular memory, whatever we want to repeat, we can program. We just have to be aware of what works and what doesn't work. And I say, most times it seems like people are fending off attackers rather than playing tennis. And tennis is this beautiful, graceful sport. And so it takes time, but you'll get it. And so then cellular memory is also psychological and mental. The mental part is the concentration. Can you stay focused? Maybe you don't have that ability yet, but you have to learn that ability to track the ball from the moment the other person hits it all the way over to you, and then watch the ball and hit it into the center of your racket. And then the psychological, do you get easily upset with yourself? Do you get angry with yourself? Do you get discouraged? These psychological habits are also part of the cellular memory. Here in this program, because there's no competition, we can actually undo, rework those kind of things, because those emotional programming are doing things to lessen your full potential, not just obviously here, but elsewhere. So there's more than just tennis going on here. Next is stroke mechanics. Many ways to swing the racket. You can do this, you can do this, you can do all kinds of mechanics. But what we're working on here is what I call the foundation strokes. The simplest, most efficient actions that will create success more and more consistently as you get them patterned into your cellular memory. I'm a stickler on mechanics, as they can tell you. I will say the same thing to you. Like, the first part of the stroke is being here and making this simple turn with your racket up like this. I will keep reminding you about the racket head up until you're doing that 100% of the time, because that's the beginning. Every time the ball comes to the right side of your body, you just do this. There's no, and you need to be doing that before the ball is on your side of the net. So you see it, and then backhand, same thing, up here. So many different ways to swing the racket, more simple and efficient ways, and we want to get those locked in, and that's why I call them the foundation strokes. And we want to get, there are all kinds of extra things you can do with your strokes, but you just want to learn those foundation strokes, because then you can go out and play really nice tennis to a pretty high level. You don't have to do the more advanced strokes. And that's one of the problems that people have is, okay, I've sort of got this stroke down, now I want to do the next most advanced stroke. And then you start working on that, and you don't have either of them. The problem is that everybody out there who comes and watches you play or hits with you is going to have things that they see that, oh, well, you need to do this. This is what you need to do to get better. Well, that may be true at some point, but most people are telling you things that are too advanced for your current situation. So stay with the most basic until you can do it without thinking about it, because nobody can think fast enough to play good tennis. It has to be part of the cells. We have to do it without thinking about it. And that's a challenge, but if you know, and see, at first your mind's eyes image of your strokes is completely blurry and fuzzy. But as you start repeating this, all of a sudden it starts clearing up. And in the end, it should be a crystal clear image of what you're doing on your stroke. So it takes time, but it's a fun process. Initially, it can be somewhat frustrating, but fun to start making those changes, and you see that you actually can do that. Right? At first, it's like, I can't do this. I'm trying to think of 27 things to do at the same time, but it just starts happening. It's been an amazing process. I'm not trying to make you champions of the club or world champions, I just want you to get out here and enjoy this wonderful sport. And
the way you enjoy it is to be able to keep the ball in play. And how you keep the ball in play is having good mechanics, right? If you're rolling your racket over like this as you hit the ball, that ball's going into the net 90% of the time, and that becomes a habit. So we have to, learn how to keep it right on edge. I will keep saying the same thing to you until you start making the change. Not because I have nothing else to say, but because there is a progression. Step A leads to step B. I'm your eyes, right? You have to be watching the ball. You can't be, thinking outside that. So I'm your eyes, and you have to learn to trust me that why would I tell you anything that's not going to help you be better? The next is footwork. Tennis is a spontaneous, improvisational dance where the basic footwork is stepping in. So you run all over the place, you run over to the court, and you step in with are you two right-handed? Yeah, so you're going to be on the right side of your body, you're going to hit a forehand, you're going to step in with your left foot. And so we dance around, and then boom, and do that. Backhand, dance around, and you step in with your right foot. That's the last step. But to get there, that's where the spontaneous improvisational dance is. And so with competitive sports, the person on the other side of the net is your opponent. Here, the person on the other side of the net is your partner, and you're working to dance with the tennis ball and with your partners. And that's where it gets to be really fun, when you can actually do that. And just that is a really high skill. And it's like, wait, we couldn't hit 2 balls, and now we can hit 3. But being able to rally with somebody else, just getting that level of skill is really challenging initially, but possible with everybody. And then that's what takes tennis into a much more athletic and aerobic sport, if you can keep the ball in play longer and longer, because you're having to run and do all that, and it becomes really almost aerobic. So anyway, yeah, strokes and footwork. And then the next one is rhythm. It's another thing. You need really strong sense of rhythm and ability to be in rhythm. And when the person on the other side of the net is your partner, then it's easier to be in rhythm with them. When the person on the other side of the net is your opponent, your goal as a good competitor is to do everything in your power to prevent them from having good rhythm. You don't want them to have good rhythm. You want to get them out of their rhythm. So why? You can win, right? People say, oh, I want the other person to play their best. What I've found over the years is people only want the other person to play their best until they start losing. And then they don't care how they, it's like, okay, they don't have to play their best as long as I win. So yeah, it's just a whole different mindset here of working together and being in rhythm with each other. Every ball that we hit has a perfect moment to be contacted. So sometimes the perfect moment, obviously the perfect moment is if we just take one step and go and right there the ball is. But a lot of times we'll be running from one side of the court to the other side of the court, and the perfect moment for that ball that you're about to hit might be just before it bounces the second time. But there is a moment there. And so what happens initially, and how I used to play, was I'd see a short ball or a ball I had to really go far to get, and I'd be like, oh, short ball, ah! That was my emotional response to moving to the ball. And now I understand, it's like, oh yeah, just relax and boom. There is no competition here, but there is only one bounce. So we're trying to get the ball on one bounce as often as we can. It teaches you to react faster. One of the big things about thinking about the ball is that we see the ball and go, oh, I can't get there. And so you don't start. So you always want to start for the ball and try to get it on one bounce. If you can't do it, that's okay. But it teaches you to react faster and faster, more quickly to get to the ball. So that's why it's like, oh, I'll just let it bounce twice. Well, I want you to do what you can to get to the ball and have it hit it on one bounce, but do not hurt yourself trying to get there and do it on one bounce, right? But it's just, yeah, teaching you to fire off immediately to the ball. All right, and the next to last one of the keys to peak performance is breathing.
Oh.
Yeah. So what do you two think is what most people do at the moment they're hitting the ball? Are they inhaling, exhaling, or holding their breath? Most people?
Holding the breath.
Holding their breath, yeah. Yeah, because again, getting into something you don't know how to do yet, you start programming that, and that's what most people do. And you can see it in their mouth, you know, like their lips are like sealed together, like you couldn't get any air in there. What you want to do is exhale, but most people are holding their breath, and so that's where we're working on the breathing, is at the moment you're hitting the ball, right at the moment of contact, you're going right as you hit the ball, not like you hear on TV with the pros, guys, and the women, yeah. That's what, you know, they're exhaling, but it's a fear-based or a strategy, because one of the ways that you get a sense of where the ball's going to go and how good a shot somebody's hit is hearing how it comes off their racket. And so if those people are screaming at that moment of contact, that makes it impossible to hear that sound. So that's another reason why that should be banned. Because, but yeah, see, again, competitors doing anything you can to win. And so screaming right there, you don't get to hear that. Because if it hits here, it has a certain sound. And if it hits here, it has a different sound. And you can tell that and know that if it hits here, it's not going as far. Right? So the breathing is really important to exhale. And just when you're working on this, I use the analogy of just, it's like, before you go to bed, you know, at night, if you were in the 18th century, you'd blow out the candle. Well, you wouldn't go up to the candle and go, you just go, you just blow the candle, and that's how we want to do it. And so we're using physics here to get powerful shots. There are two ways to generate power in tennis. One is to swing really hard. The other way is to put our body weight into the ball and hit that ball at the right moment. You know, you're going to hit this powerful shot, and it'll feel like you did nothing. And you know, that's almost a problem for people. No, it has to feel like I did something. If I don't effort and feel like I'm rawr, you know, I didn't do it. No. That the highest level is the effortless, and that's what we're going for. It's not, you know, no timeline on it. Just keep moving toward that direction, and yeah, you'll hit this ball and it'll feel like you did nothing, and it'll feel sweet. It's like, whoa, did I do that? Was that me that did that? And yeah. And so with the swinging really hard, you have to play so much more because you have to time it perfectly when you do that. And so, yeah, with the breath, it helps you get back to key number 2, the relaxation. And then long term, what you'll be able to do is when your partner contacts the ball on their side of the net, you want to inhale and then exhale at the moment you hit it. And our breathing, in and out through the mouth. Okay, this is not yoga. All right, we're not doing it through our nose. You can't get enough air through your nose to have it get out there. So just feeling that loose and relaxed. And this is the thing that takes this from playing tennis to playing in the zone, where peak performance happens. You know, everybody's heard about somebody playing in the zone or playing out of their mind. Okay, when I started teaching in 1974, Tim Galway wrote one of the classic books in tennis called The Inner Game of Tennis, and that was all about learning how to get into the fabled state of being in the zone. And so this is what I've been working on for the last 50 years, is helping you learn how to get into the zone. And the first thing is take the competition out, because that's the other thing I saw you in competitive sports. The zone only happens really rarely, and so it's like, oh well, here, let's learn how to be in the zone without any competition, and then we'll see about doing it in competition. But yeah, we just want to take our time and learn that. So it's and then that brings us to the last key to peak performance, which is confidence. You'll hear coaches and parents or whatever, yeah, you got to be more confident. But there's that little voice inside us. Well, I don't know what I'm doing. How can I be confident if I don't know what I'm doing? And you can't. That's fake confidence. That's not what you want. You want to learn, develop those skills in those 12 areas, and then you start having this inner confidence that is unshakable. Because one of the things that happens if you start playing competition is you're seeing some guy, and this used to happen all the time when I was doing junior and adult tennis. So somebody would walk onto the court with like 5 rackets and have like the perfect tennis attire. You're like, oh, I could be in trouble here, and so just they would psych you out just what they look like. But that's the beauty of this. You have to be able to back up what you're doing. Even cooperatively, you have to have the skill to be able to hit the ball. And a lot of times those people didn't have the skill. They just had the money to buy the rackets and the clothes. So sort of interesting. But yeah, the confidence comes at the end, and as you develop those skills, and then you start going, yeah, no, I can do this. And I know 3 of you are starting to get a better understanding. Like, no, I can actually do this. I see I can play this sport. One of the things when you're taking, listening to that introduction, something I say catches your attention, and you start thinking about that a little bit, but I'm still talking. And so other pieces are going past that, because you're focused on that one thought that caught your attention. And that's why, doing the class several times and doing the talk several times really helps, because then you don't get caught on that one piece because you remember you thought about that, and then, oh yeah, wait, I never heard that before. Well, that's because your attention was on that other piece. And so that's another big thing of the learning process, is that, and why we don't want to be rushed through anything, is because there's so many pieces to it. I talked in the previous session about Kumon, the Kumon method. It's a series of tests from the most basic, simple stuff up through advanced calculus in the math, complete proficiency in a language. But it starts with the very simple things. So they have all these tests, and you don't get to go on to test 2 until you've gotten 100% on test 1. And why is that?
Because you need to have the skills first.
Right. So
sure
you have
everything.
mastery over the most basic skills. And then you go on to test 2. And some people are, oh, that's a harsh way to learn. Well, but it's how we should be learning, and it shouldn't be a harsh thing. It's not like you go in and your first test has a bunch of advanced things. It has the most simple things, and so you learn those, and then you go on. And so, but in our educational system, the competitive educational system, you get passed along with a grade of 70, and so a grade of 70 means you don't know at least 30% of the material. And if you go on to the next most advanced class, it's a real problem there, because you don't know 30%. So it's like a remedial thing to get that 30%, instead of just having people take classes until they mastered that level and then going on. So that's where this class is, why we do a lot of the same stuff every time, so it becomes ingrained into that cellular memory, and we can do it without thinking about it. That's where it has to be. Like I said earlier, nobody can think fast enough and play good tennis. So we start at day one, tossing and catching a ball. Okay? If you can't do that consistently, it's going to be challenging to play really good tennis. So it's not a punishment, it's just, oh yeah, okay. And each time you do it, like you said, it's better and easier. And again, it's getting programmed into the cells so you don't have to think about it.
I feel like one way I know I'm learning is because the first time after Fun 1 over the summer, I was like, okay, now I'm ready for Fun 2. Or I felt like I was, in my head, I was like, oh, I need to know that I passed this class to go to the next one. And he's like, I don't think you're ready yet. I'm like, what? What do you mean I'm not ready? Because I'm so used to being like a straight A Berkeley girl.
Right.
Competition rah means that, like, you go to the next thing. But I'm so glad that this is the third time that I get to take Fun 1.
Right.
Because I feel like I'm not ready. I don't feel like I've mastered. I've gotten a lot better,
right,
but I have not mastered all of the intricacies of tennis yet.
Right.
And it feels good to stay here until I'm
but
confident.
See, the whole system is, oh, I got to go to the next thing, next level, or I'm a failure, or I'm, and it's just, no. that's the flaw, another of the flaws of the system. Just take your time, and then you'll know when you're ready. And just it's a fun process, even staying in the same class, right? I mean, you two can vouch for that too, and you do feel yourself getting better, and that's the bottom line.
I can catch balls now.
I can catch balls. Yeah, but see, again, that's important, because that's a basic, and if you don't have that, and if you can't step in and do the footwork efficiently, and again, it's not correctly or Brent's way, it's just what from these 50 years of teaching I've found is the simplest, most basic way to do it. And like I said in the intro part, if you can just get that down, you're going to have tons of fun playing tennis. I mean, it's just, you don't need to do all the advanced stuff. If you just, and that's the one thing I didn't bring up, so we'll do a little more talking here and then we'll hit some balls. You'll hear teams, coaches, the team's in a slump and they're losing, they've lost a bunch of games. The reporter will ask, oh, well, what are you going to do? We're going back to the fundamentals. Got to do, we got to get back to the fundamentals. It's like, okay. And then what happens when they start playing well again? They're asked, what did you do? Well, we went back to the fundamentals. And that's how we got out of this. So at some point in the past, I realized, we're just going to stay working on the fundamentals. And so one day you'll be advanced. And it'll be an advance that you don't have to go back and work on the fundamentals again. But so, I mean, what that says is they didn't get the fundamentals down before they got into competition. And that's the big problem for, like that fellow I told you about, that, I didn't really beat him. He beat himself in that match, but he didn't have his psychological fundamentals. He was an incredibly gifted physical player, but he didn't have the mental side down. And so that's why he'd be up and down and play great. And if somebody could challenge him psychologically, he'd fall apart. So that's a fundamental. That's why we need to get that stuff down beforehand also. And so that's why this program is different. And take your time, have fun, and you play better in tennis, and you'll feel better about yourself. It's like, hey, again, when I say, oh yeah, this is one of the highest skill sports there is, people are like, yeah. But then you start getting into it and you realize, oh yeah, it is. And that the fact that you're starting to be able to do it means there's a lot of progress going on there.
Hopefully, you have a clearer understanding and insight into the learning process and the keys to peak performance. Developing these keys will enable you to learn whatever your heart desires. When I first removed competition from my Effortless Tennis program, I was nervous. Yes, I was confident from what I had learned over the previous 18 years that the premature introduction of competition was the core reason why so few people excel and so many fail in the competitive system. But I understood that I was challenging a completely entrenched educational model
that worships competition as sacrosanct, believing it cannot be questioned or improved. After an additional 33 years of research, though, I have the unshakable inner confidence I spoke of earlier to know that this is the central issue that the educational establishment needs to address. Why do we force people to compete before they have basic skills? Until students can demonstrate competence in both the physical and psychological fundamentals of whatever sport, activity, or subject they are learning, the educational process needs to be competition-free. Once competence is achieved, compete if you want. I guarantee you will be more successful. The exciting news is that it's no longer necessary to have to compete to prove ourselves or achieve our potential. Peak performance can't happen in competition. It's impossible to be or play our best when an opponent is doing everything to prevent that outcome. True peak performance happens beyond competition, where we're working together to achieve our collective potential. I can't be my best unless I'm helping you be your best. A non-competitive learning environment creates a physically and psychologically healthier way to live, learn, and play. If we ever hope to solve the myriad problems facing our world, we need to evolve beyond this us versus them, lower level of consciousness obsession with competition. Education's ultimate purpose is to teach people how to work with each other, to learn to see others as partners, not adversaries and obstacles to our goals. We are an amazing species. It's time to actualize our potential. Everyone has a piece of the puzzle. Thanks for watching, and feel the joy.